going to talk about venture, we are going to talk about startup, we are going to talk about growth, and we're going to talk about all things building unicorns. Okay, so what I generally will do with this is I will start off at the beginning and we'll talk about what's happened last week, impactful things that I've seen are really working. And then I want to talk about a couple of founders that we have within the Expert Dojo ecosystem. Remember, we've invested in almost 300 companies and are doing a ton of things. And so I'll be able to give you some really good feedback on the founders that we have there. And then the final thing is we're going to bring in one of our exceptional founders who's doing amazing things and is growing at a rate of just off the charts. And this particular founder is really exciting, and I'm going to explain all the reasons why afterwards. Okay, so I'll let you know when he comes in. And first of all, let me just take some lessons from last week. And I don't normally talk about investors straight away, but I want to combine growth with investors, and something that because the market right now is difficult for investors, right? Agreed. And it's very difficult for founders. And when I say difficult for investors, it's difficult for investors because investors have to get money from LPs, from limited partners. So actually everything that a founder is doing, a general partner of a venture capital firm has to do exactly the same thing. We, Expert Dojo, are in the same place. We're fundraising right this second. And so I last week went up to San Francisco and I went to a physical in-person event, and we paid for a physical in-person event. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about some of the philosophies of how do you make sure that you raise money. And I want to talk about actually going into the world again versus email. And so many of you have heard me talk over the last couple of weeks about my worry about the effectiveness of email. Now, for many years, we have been very, very happy with how excellent, platforms like Apollo have been and how valuable that's been in our companies being able to build. We've had companies like eBombo that are emailing up to 100,000 prospects every single month. You may think it's impossible. It's not. It's happening. And it's why they've reached a growth rate from $20K a month to $380,000 a month. And we've done that with our very good friends over at BDev Ventures. But I've watched with a lot of the other companies as they've gone into trying to build out on like I said, the platforms like Apollo or using 100.io or using the other platforms as well. I've seen how those folks have struggled. And more and more and more. I'm also watching my behaviors when it comes to email. And as more and more emails are coming in, I am deleting more and more of what I consider to be spam. And so what do I consider to be spam? I consider anything which I really haven't asked for, unless it is something highly relevant and something that's going to be a very obvious benefit to me in the short term. And most products are not that. Most products require a little bit of love and attention before they can actually get to that type of stage. So in person for me was a really interesting test and experiment last week. And so what I did was I signed up for an event which was up in a really nice hotel in San Francisco, but the Fairmont Hotel, where there was a bunch of investors. Now, not like 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000, it was like 200. But the speakers who were speaking, family offices, fund allocators, fund of funds, private equity, and then there was another little piece on crypto as well. So I went up there the evening before, I went to the networking that evening, I then was at the event the next day, I then was at the event the following day. And I made two very conscious decisions. First of all, if I was going to spend money to come to an event like this, I wanted to have in-person interactions with at least 100 people. 100 people. In this case, this was over 2.5 days. This was pretty much 50%, maybe 30, 40% of the entire amount of people who are actually there. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how I did that and some of the tactics that I employed to make sure that that happened. And my other intention was so that I could see, is our live event something that we should continue going forward to try and build these relationships. Because whether it's a general partner of a fund looking for limited partner money, or whether it's a startup looking for money from a general partner, it's the same thing. It's all based on trust, and the trust has to be there. And to build up those trust, you have to be able to build a relationship. It's very, very, very hard to do that just based on email outreach. So, arrived on the event on the Tuesday evening of last week. Tuesday evening, got up there at 4 o'clock, over at the event at 5. It was a 2-hour networking event. I met with 19 people. And when I say met with 19 people, I had one-on-one interactions where we swapped contact information, where I either sent them a WhatsApp message, or I sent them a LinkedIn, or I sent them a text with my information and captured their information immediately afterwards. As I finished, I then went out for a bite to eat with another 6, which meant that I nailed 25 of the 100 that I wanted to engage with on the first day. Of the 25, there were 3 real prospects, family offices who invested in funds. Okay, next day, I got into the hotel nice and early. I made sure I didn't stay in the hotel, by the way. I stayed in a much cheaper hotel. Don't confuse going to nice places where you're going to meet people who can afford to invest in you with you being on a very high level and being able to go to the most expensive hotels in the world. Even when you raise money, you still should not go to expensive hotels, because it's not your money. Not your money, not my money. And it's something that we have to have huge respect for. So, arrived in the hotel first thing in the morning, went to the breakfast, immediately got 6 new contacts, including one contact who's a co-owner of one of the top football teams, another contact who's a top decision maker, and another contact who's another family office as well. That pushed me up to 31, but I'll say 28, because the really good contacts that we had there, right? Then the event started. As the event started, what I did was I didn't watch the full panels. I only watched 10 to 15 minutes of the panel, because I wanted to see who was worthy on the panel to go back to at the end. I then stepped away from the panel, walked outside, went over to the coffee area, and literally every single person who came past that coffee area was talked to by me all day. At the same time, my team was writing to everybody who was speaking there, asking for appointments, of which I got 4 appointments, of which one was absolutely excellent, from a money allocator that was straight out of San Francisco, fund of funds again. During that day, I got another 40 people. I got 10 people from the panels, and the rest of the people where I met out of the coffee station itself. That brought me up to 71 people that I had conversations with. They had again another networking event that evening. Again, I was the last person to leave that networking event. I hit over 90 by the end of the first day in the networking event. The next day, I got another 35. So here's my point to this story. If you are going to build an outreach to investors, are you going to build an outreach to anything? You're not going to do it by sitting behind your desk like some nerd sending out tens of thousands of emails every single day, or tens of emails every single day. You have to look at multiple channels, and some of those channels have to be in real life. Now, whether it be that you go to an event like that, but you maximize the time there and you maximize the opportunity of being with the right people, whether it be phone calls that you're making, whether it be conferences that you go to, what you have to do in every single case is make sure that the people that you're engaging with tie into 2 things. Number 1, you want to make sure they tie into the conversion numbers that you need to be able to hit the objectives you have. If you want to close, say, 5 investors, and you know that your conversion rate is going to be, let's say, 10% from meeting to close, well, you want to make sure you got 50 meetings. Right? And if you got to get 50 meetings, you got to have a certain amount of people that you touch. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's more, maybe it's less. You need to work it out for yourself, depending on your company. It might be 1 in 1,000, in which case it's got to be 5,000. Maybe it has to be 50,000 people that you have engagements with. What I know is 2 things. 1, There are tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of millions of investors all over the world. There are investors for your company. 100% guaranteed. If you have something which should be invested in, there is an investor out there. Number two, most people don't play the numbers games. They try hard, they go after people, they try and bring them in, but they don't play the numbers game. So take a leaf out of my book from last week. Get your ass out of your seat, find an event. You can either pay money or not pay money. That's not necessarily the objective, but make sure the target demographic is the right target demographic for you. And when you go there, you don't sit there looking at your emails all day and maybe talk to 2 or 3 people. You go there like an animal. Everybody you see, no matter who you see them, you have 5 or 6 lines which are lined up, and then you go in with those lines with everybody. How are you enjoying the conference? What did you think of the last speaker? What are you doing here? What are you trying to get out of the conference? Where do you come from? Are you staying in the hotel? Is it sunny outside? It doesn't matter. You're trying to get to a point where you can engage in a conversation. Okay, that's it. Now we're going to make this stuff more interesting because we're going to bring in Tanvir, and we're going to talk about real founders building real companies that are actually doing incredible things in the world, making the world a better place, saving lives, making money, doing venture growth. Actually, there's not much he's not doing. Oh, and portfolio company of Expert Dojo. Hello. Yeah. Hey, Tanvir.
Hey, Brian. How have you been? Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. Look, the only reason for this on a Monday morning is to give everybody a kick in the ass, and anybody who's an early stage startup, so they can see what real success looks like today. Not a story of like 5 years ago about how a founder started and what they did, but like founders who are breaking through massively in this moment. That is the only consistent on the live stream. It is great founders who are killing it. Folks listening, founders who want to learn from you, and investors who want to invest in founders who are winning. Like, that's it. And by the way, just to like create some context for this for everybody else, like Tanvir has gone through this. I go through this as a fund. Like any really great entrepreneur who breaks through and has the consistency of the persistence knows that like when you get to a moment where you start to break through, the conversion ratios, the outbound, the conversations, everything with investors, it becomes much easier. Because all an investor cares about, principally, is making sure they get the best return on their money versus all of the other opportunities that they have out there. That's it, right? After that, the other cool stuff comes in, but that's the first and most important thing. And Sova Health are absolutely crushing it right now. So can we start by, I'm going to launch real fast into like the story of how much respect I have for you, because this is not an easy thing to find the right ideal customer profile, to find the right marketing channel, to find the right behavioral psychology to be able to speak to people, and to make sure that the right product is coming through. Like, it's not, you have to do almost process of elimination on each of those one by one to get to this almost impossible formula where everything connects. And you've been through that, and you built it, and you followed it, and you never gave up. And then you got to a stage where you're like, the recipe is absolutely perfect. And so I do want to talk through that in a couple of minutes. But before that, can you give a little bit of just an overview, a minute or 2 minutes on Sova Health, just the genesis of why you created the company and what you're doing for the world?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So, hey guys, I'm Tanvir. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sova. We're a full stack gut health company, currently based out of India. Now, what we do at Sova and why we do it. So a little bit of the why first. I am somebody who's played tennis at the national level. So sport and health is something that's generally very close to me. Live it as a personal passion as well. So I had this very simple need where I said, hey, how am I supposed to make the everyday decisions around health simple for myself? You know, I'm in my mid-30s now. When I actually started thinking about my health, I was still in my mid-20s, and it was the really simple stuff. You know, what do you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner? How do you go make a good decision at a supermarket? So that's how my curiosity around Sova actually started up, or rather my curiosity around health started up. And Sova is an outcome of well, one part of that and one part of meeting my co-founder, Max. Max is a geneticist. He has a background in cancer genomics from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. He's actually somebody who's deep into microbiome research, having previously collaborated with Nestle on building a product to improve gut health in infants. Now, shifting base to what we do, we are a India-focused company right now. So we run our business operations in India, but we have global aspirations. We run a full stack platform where we have three core verticals. One, we offer something called a gut microbiome test. For some of you who may not have heard about this, this is a DNA-based or a genetic sequencing-based test, which helps you profile for different microorganisms in your gut, essentially helping you identify the root cause of any sort of gut conditions that you may have, and if not, at least the probiotics or the good bacteria that you should be consuming. So along with this diagnostic test, once we know what needs to be fixed, we also have a portfolio of over-the-counter probiotic supplements, which are all formulated basis the data that we collect from the microbiome test. This is what makes us slightly different from the regular D2C nutraceuticals company. And then for people who have more serious, severe chronic conditions, we run a gut health program where you actually get the opportunity to work with a team of healthcare professionals, usually a combination of nutritionists and doctors. So that's Sova Health. We sort of launched the gut health platform January last year, and I can't say it's always been smooth sailing, but I think we found some interesting intersections that we're now doubling down on. So traction's been good for the last 12 months or so, and we're continuing to expand both our product portfolio as well as going deeper with the findings of the microbiome test.
You're very humble. Traction has been awesome over the last 12 months or so, and you're absolutely crushing it right now. And the thing is, like, for folks who don't understand here, like, Tanvir is very humble, but he's saving lives. It all starts with the gut. Like, it all begins here. People die because they don't take care of their gut health. And if you do, you can live incredible, phenomenal lives where you're full of energy and things are great. And ever since, actually, funny, we made the investment, I got more and more into it. And the more I looked at it, I'm like, what are you doing, Brian? Like, you're putting this stuff into your body. Like, are you an idiot? And this is just all about knowledge versus ignorance. I sometimes think that the world wants to keep us ignorant, and that it's only when great entrepreneurs like this come out that actually we get the freedom to really understand the impact of the things that we do or don't do on a daily basis. So that meaning and that purpose came across to me like very, very early on. Here are the other things that I loved about Sova and the team and what was being created from the very start is most entrepreneurs, when outreaching to customers, you have your email that you sent out to customers. You hope that it clicks. If it doesn't click, maybe you send them another email in the future and you send them to your website. Very sophisticated entrepreneurs like Tanvir, they will create amazing email sequences, multiple different sequences, which go to different landing pages to test out different messages. And they will do that because they understand that this is like a car engine. And the hard thing about building like a relationship with a customer from outreaching to engaging to closing to keeping them happy is that you need all of the pieces on the car engine to be working in conjunction. Like if one thing is not working well, the car engine won't start. And so having this email sequence whereby you're creating a conversation leading to certain messages which are predetermined for that customer is really good. And I even remember in the early days, as like Tanvir was like looking so hard on what is my ideal customer profile? What is the product that we're going to be offering in the future? Everything that is part of Horizon 1, which is developing the relationship with a customer, you already knew you needed to build relationships. So I want to start there if we can, because you were one of the most sophisticated entrepreneurs as far as your growth patterns that you were looking to build. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into that and also into the importance of it? And not just the things that like, oh my gosh, it made it work really well, but it was like, no, it didn't work really well, which actually led us to other areas quicker because we knew we had a great system in place.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. So I think one thing that we've done from the early days is have a bias for action. and just go out there and try different things. So whether it was about finding the customer, the ICP or the ideal customer profile, or it was about going and figuring out which products to launch and what kind of products can actually give us the right fit for the market, we went out and we did it. So even with the email engines, we've never depended too much on tooling and softwares. We've tried to segment the profiles, do it manually whenever we needed to, and actually send out the emails and see where we're able to get some traction from our customers. And I think this is one thing that's sort of helped me through my entrepreneurial career, whether it was Sova or the two businesses that I was a part of before this, that you just you don't know the formula. You have to go out and try it, and you have to keep trying till you hit something that works for you. So India actually has a pretty dominant WhatsApp culture as well. So a lot of our communications over a period of time, we figured out was that instead of having email as our primary channel, we actually moved it to WhatsApp. And even within WhatsApp, we've tried multiple different combinations where WhatsApp itself has their business APIs, and that allows us certain kind of communication routes and cycles, and we've been trying different ones on that. Surprisingly, sometimes SMS also starts to work. So we do a little bit of SMS, not too much there. But that's how we've been planning out our comms over a period of time.
And when you were using WhatsApp, how would you create? I mean, and can you create sequences in WhatsApp the same as
Yes,
you can do on email?
you can. And actually, WhatsApp is more sophisticated because not only can you create sequences, you can actually respond real time. The WhatsApp for Business API now almost works like a bot, like an AI bot, where it responds or it interacts with the consumer and takes them all the way through till the purchase cycle. So my WhatsApp for WhatsApp Business Bot is actually backlinked to my Shopify engine, which means that I could power a message for a customer segment that may have transacted, let's say 15 days earlier, with a repeat buy communication and let them transact through that message interaction itself. So then that's
It's
like a
really
closed loop.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
closed
it's
loop.
really fascinating because it's really when you take the intersection of AI and what's happening within other messaging apps and also what's happening within people, that it's really you have to be so incredibly engaged with where people are at that particular moment, and without having the efficiencies of using AI, it's extremely hard to compete. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of the stream that like email is hard right now and email is not working the way it used to work. And so to your point, starting to push things over to WhatsApp, but creating the same type of systems that you had in email is really incredible. Plus you're building communities on WhatsApp, I'm guessing, as opposed to it just being, one-way communication all of the way.
So separate purposes. The business API does not allow you to build communities, but once you have interacting customers, there are other ways to invite them onto the community. So we do have a WhatsApp community, but the input for that is not the business API. We invite customers who've transacted with us or via social media, or sometimes even have an optional button on our WhatsApp interactions to let them join the community.
By the way, here's your favorite type of question, right? Because this is where can you see the question on the screen there, by the way, from Sunil? So and I'm guessing, and I bring this up now when you're talking about communities, because when it comes to communities, the communities are not something you want to sell to, right? The communities are something that you want to create an education area or a fun area or a something that's of benefit to an entire community rather than one group of people. And so speak a little bit about that, but also if you could answer Sunil's question as well, that would be great.
Sure. So I think for us, communities is about sharing information. It's about being genuinely helpful and useful to our consumers. And in a sunrise industry like ours, where we're one of the early movers, I think it's very important to be able to not only do it for the selfish reasons of creating credibility around the brand, but actually do it to help people understand these concepts, right? Gut microbiome testing. Now, this is a new terminology or jargon, if you want to say so. Not everybody even understands what it is. In fact, we've been organically, and I'd say we've been fortunate to be boosted earlier this summer when Netflix actually, and where they spoke extensively about the microbiome test, and this suddenly opened up, a new pocket of the audiences for us. But this is what we try and do on our community platforms as well, where we talk around the topic. We try and help people understand what's happening in the space, how are their bodies actually being impacted, and without a necessary sales outcome or a sales intent in that process. So that's what we do around communities. Sunil, about Map My Genome, this is also a genetic test, but the depths are different. So I can go with the details of the report if you'd like to. But essentially, when you're doing genetic testing, there are different kinds of sequencing techniques that are involved, something called a long read or a short read, which gives you different depths of data at the back end. And just like you could get a blood test from multiple different labs and you could be testing for different parameters, genetic testing is also going to hit that point. Interestingly, in India at this point of time, we're actually fairly early. So the test that we offer, as compared to the test that My Genome offers, we have a much deeper panel that you are provided with. Not only do we track all the different kinds of microorganisms, namely bacteria, fungi, protozoa, yeast groups, stuff like that. We also give you an understanding of second order effects like neurotransmitter production, antibiotic resistance, especially with the pandemic. People are getting more and more resistant to the common antibiotics. This is something that we can catch in the microbiome report. We also talk to you about SIBO, which is essentially how your body is digesting food, inflammatory markers. So a lot of really, really good indicators to what could be potentially causing trouble to your gut. And then also we offer a consultation once your report comes back, because this report can get pretty overwhelming sometimes. It's like 40 pages long. There are more than 250 different microorganisms that are reported. So we try and break it down for you, help you understand what you can do as the next steps to actually take care of your body or to solve for the problem that you are looking to solve for.
Yeah. And so
our test is a stool-based test. I saw a question around that. Sorry.
And then, so as this is where communities, and hopefully what everybody's getting a feel for right now is marketing today is not about one thing. It's not about just hitting people with email and hoping that it sticks. And it's not about just sitting in a community, and it's about all of this together. It's about raising your profile, building domain awareness to domain authority, and from domain authority to domain domination. It's about satisfying your community so they feel heard and not just spoken to. Because that kind of question that Sunil has just come up with is like the general things that people just want to have a conversation around, not just go onto a Q&A and find out what's happening. But without the outreach, whether it's through WhatsApp or LinkedIn or email or whatever else you're using, you're not going to build up community in the first place. So you understand, it's all of this on making sure you get your brand out there. And so I want to go back, Tamsil, to like the early days as you were building it. And I want to look at like the chicken or the egg, right? So you had a product which you knew was your early lovable product. You had messaging, which you had built into highly sophisticated email funnels that you were sending out to your user. And you had messaging, and your messaging was speaking to a way that you felt would most engage with people who were that ideal customer profile. Now, as you go from those early days to 2 years later, where you are right now, how did you move forward with these, and which ones, how did the area, the prominence of importance shift between all three to help you get to the place you are right now, where you have an amazing growth loop? And when I say growth loop, everyone, I'm talking about a scalable growth methodology, whereby if he puts $100,000 in, it will grow to here. $1 million in, it will grow to here. $10 million in, it will grow to here. Like, that's how you build a unicorn. So talk to me just about, with those three separate areas, how the focus moved on and off them to get you to where you are today.
So I think the first 6 months, Brian, is all about trying different messaging. right? You don't know on day zero what's going to work and what's not going to work. So the simple thing that we do is we try and think through from a customer's perspective, what they are looking for, what is the problem that they're trying to solve, and we try and address those problems. And we'll try and do it in different ways, different hooks, different core messages, and try and create a matrix around it so that we have some sort of science and some structure to this process. Experiment fast, and experiment with learning, and keep learning through iterative cycles. So that's the early, I would say, process till the time we start finding something that works. And here I'm obviously alluding more to performance marketing as well, because that's where we get the best reward cycle going at the early stages, because you can reach customers at a faster pace. So once we figured out what sort of messaging is starting to work, then we start doubling down on that to see, okay, till what point can we actually scale this? Sometimes while a certain communication style or hook or creative for that matter might work in the early parts of a campaign, when you start doubling down on that campaign, it actually starts either saturating or giving you negative return. So then you know that you're running out of an audience which is willing to adopt this particular kind of messaging. So then we again take a step back, go to the drawing board, and start finding the next set of messages that can work. What we've also done over a period of time, and this has been a learning, and I think we're still in that learning cycle, is sometimes even think about messaging and advertising while we're still deciding which kind of products we want to launch. I'll give you an example here. When we as a gut health company have condition specific or symptom specific product ranges, which we call our symptom first products, and then we have wellness products, which are more preventative use, general wellness products. Now, just by definition, while I would be, if you'd asked me this 2 years ago, I would have been very biased towards launching symptom specific products only, because I understand that here, well, people have a problem, they're looking to solve a problem, and I have a good product, so why will they not buy? But today, if you ask me the question, I feel like even our product strategy needs to have a top, middle, and a bottom funnel. Because when you're advertising, and as a D2C company, which is largely dependent on advertising on Meta and Google and Amazon, you want to think about what kind of use cases do these platforms reward. So while I won't have all my products in the wellness or the preventative range, some of our products are actually being positioned with the thought process that this is going to give us an advantage when we start advertising, because these wellness products will actually have much larger audience pools to be able to target, thereby bringing down our CPMs and our CPCs, thereby giving us a nice acquisition traffic source, which we can then nurture and convert into more symptom specific products if we have to. So, and this was a commonsensical approach which got validated through our advertising learnings, in combination with what we do on the NPD and or on the new product development and formulation side. So it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting how, as the business scales, the complexities of the business also change. And this is actually one of the cycles that we are going through now, where now that we've reached 10 products in our portfolio, now when we formulate products, we don't just do it from the medical first angle. Of course, we do that first, but we also think about, at least factor into our NPD calendars, which kind of products we're actually going to be targeting or advertising to be set at the top of the funnel, and which ones are going to go more in the conversion or the bottom funnel.
How interesting. And I've watched you. You're one of the most sophisticated entrepreneurs I know, as far as taking a science-based approach to marketing. You're constantly testing. You're constantly testing the messaging. You're constantly testing the funnels. I remember calls we had in the past where you're like, Brian, the SDR team, they were performing really well, but it's become diminishing returns right now. SDR team have got to go. Email was performing great. Facebook, you remember, of course, but like going back in the day when like they were doing great, and then they crushed you because they suddenly started changing all of their algorithms. So this is part of the growth process. Remember, everybody's job here is to build a growth loop. When you have a growth loop, all investors are going to want to put money into you. That's why you're not having any problems raising money right now, because you have a growth loop that you've built. But it is science, and you may have to try between those three things: fixing the product. That means making it better and better and better and better. Making sure that you and I mentioned messaging and I mentioned ICP, but I actually didn't even mention channels. And so the channels also sits in there. Like if I go back to like a comment that Charles has just come up with, which was to my point at the very beginning about events, and I mentioned this event, and like events may be an incredibly good channel for you. If there's something it may be that you're looking to host yourself at an event, have a booth at an event, or it may be that you're going as well. Like you just heard me say how I went to an event over 2 days and I met with close on 140, 150 people, one-on-one, exchanging information. Was that lucky? No, it was intentional. Like I literally went in there with a number in my head. I knew the types of people I wanted to meet. And I knew the amount of people that I wanted to meet. I had my target put in place. There was no way I was going to that event. Now, when you like look at this type of thing, number one, normally free is what you pay and free is what you get. So a lot of the free events are garbage because they're free, right? And so the people who are organizing them can't do it, but not all. You can sometimes find it, but I generally find that actually the reason that in-person networking doesn't work is because we are garbage, because we don't put any planning in it before it. We don't spend the time to hit numerical objectives. And what I've just said about everything that Tanvir is doing, from taking a highly scientific approach about making sure that he's reaching out to the right amount of people to get the right amount of turnaround, to get the right amount of sales, to get the engine working the way it's supposed to. Most people don't do that. So I agree with you. For the events that you go to that you don't have a highly quantifiable outcome, 10 out of 10 of them will be terrible. For the ones you do go to that do have a highly quantifiable outcome, most of the time people won't do it because they're too shy. If you'd make a decision on the events, clear decision making, which I made here, family offices, LPs, funds, and I had decided I was going to speak to everybody. I'm not above anything. You humble yourself, you go in with your objective, and you achieve the objective you're looking to do. Then you have to make sure that you just do two things, really three things maybe. The first thing here is make sure that the things you're saying to people is the right thing to say. I would walk over to folks and say, great speak, you're amazing on stage. I would love to know more about your thesis. Can you share it with me? Get them talking. Number two, after you've worked out how you get into the conversation, make sure you have follow-up. So I'll be adding people's names in spreadsheets and into HubSpot with a full follow-up loop that's going to go to those. And finally, make sure that you plan future events based on what you've learned from the last event. But you should have a budget allocated for in-person meetings, presentations, hosting yourself, showcasing yourself, all of those types of things. Tanvir, any comments or thoughts or in real life promotion?
I think while we're not always, as founders, we may not always be the most extroverted. And I hear this, oftentimes when I'm speaking to younger founders as well. I think we are the brand. At the early stage, we have to wear our brand on our sleeve and be out there and be representing the company, the purpose, the mission, and it helps immensely. If it may not always seem so in the moment, but I've also seen a compounding effect with this. And I can tell you, as somebody who's working in an industry that's fairly new, that over a period of time, there's almost a community of people working in gut health and people working in microbiome science and people working in, probiotics. And now when we see each other, firstly, we've got past interactions to fall back upon. And I can see over a period of time that, people are organically connecting me to other people. I'm helping them connect with other people. And this community feeling is starting to come about. So there's no doubt, right? And once you're out there, people put a face to the name, they put a face to the brand, they connect backwards with your story, with your passion. And that definitely helps.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying there. It's not just about like directly, I sell to you, you sell to me, I buy, you buy. It's about how do we partner together to build something bigger that lifts all ships. But
Absolutely.
we all got to get up off our asses, and we got to go there, and we got to make sure that we're present, and we got to make sure that we're not like sitting in a conversation for 2 hours with the same person because we're terrified of the rest of the room. Like, yeah, you can't do that. Okay. And actually, you know what I really like about this as well? It says a lot to me when I see these types of questions coming through, is that when I have a growth live stream, which is only about growth and raising money and raising growth, and then most of the questions are actually about your product. I like this. So like, let's lean in, because these things say that actually say to me as an investor, it's like, damn, he's even better than I thought. This is good. So what have you got to say to Lena here?
So Lena, this is exactly what the gut microbiome test does. So very quickly, it's a stool-based test. We actually extract DNA from a stool sample, sequence that DNA, collect data on more than 4,000 microorganisms at the back end. We actually only report back at this point of time 250 microorganisms, like I was mentioning earlier, across the subgroups of bacteria, protozoa, fungi, yeast, etc. This helps you pinpoint the underlying root causes for conditions. So I can today, because of the kind of longitudinal data that we have, as well as clinical research, tell you if you have a particular, lactobacillus strain missing. Lactobacillus, as you may have assumed, is from the lactose or milk-based products. What kind of symptoms could that be causing? Because you may not be digesting a particular kind of food very well. So that's how we're able to pinpoint, and that's exactly the magic around the microbiome test. We're able to pinpoint what a deficiency in a particular bacterial strain could cause from a gut symptom perspective. And once we know that, not only can we give you the right probiotic to bring that balance back, but also help you eliminate the bad bacteria or the pathogens that that also get reported or get picked up in the gut microbiome test report.
Yeah.
As far
And
as
by
your
the
second,
way, I
yeah.
love this next question, because it actually speaks to the biggest problem most entrepreneurs have, right? A lot of us, like for you, it's obvious, but for most people, there are some aspects of changing behaviors to bring people to a better world. But people are lazy, people are stupid, people are ignorant, people are tired, people are distracted. Like there's all these things happening in our lives, and people have too many other things coming at them. So, how do you take people whereby you have a highly logical argument, which is emotional, logical, whatever? It's like, you're going to die. I'm going to help you live. You're feeling lethargic and tired. I'm going to help you feel amazing and awesome. But even with that, it's not enough. How do you coach them to change their behaviors?
So let me tell you a very quick story. The word Sova, it has a meaning. It's a Hebrew word, and it means the feeling of satiety, and it's usually used in the context of food. So when we eat something and we feel really happy, that emotional state is captured in the word Sova. That's our brand promise to our customers. That's the emotional connect that we want to have, and that's the feeling that we want to deliver. So when it comes to coaching, our approach is not a stick approach. It's not that I'm going to give you this diet chart and now you need to force it down your throat. We actually work backwards with our customers with a lot of empathy. We try and first understand what is it that their lifestyles are today, what are they consuming, how they're living, and then try and make the minimal number of changes to it. And we basically try and ease them into the process. So firstly, when you think about making changes to habits, a lot of it has got to do with human psychology. When somebody is convinced that they need to make a change, they will more often than not try and make it happen, right? And find a way to make it happen. So this is something that we establish with the diagnostic test, because in the diagnostic test, instead of me just giving you a random diet chart and asking you to follow it, if I show you that on your report there are certain set of parameters that are very clearly pointing at a problem, your conviction or belief in my solution is automatically going to rise, because now you know that I'm coming from a point of credibility. There's a fact that I'm acting upon. So that's stage one. Stage two, we minimize the number of changes that we try and get you to make so that you don't have to deviate too much from your existing lifestyle. Of course, you have a problem and you understand that and you will need to make change. And stage three is that we're there with you, because we understand that this is an up and down journey. So which is why we don't run a single consult model. It's not like you come, you meet us once and then you're off on your own. We run a program, and we run a program specifically targeted at people who have severe or chronic conditions, because we understand that they need to be handheld through the process. And we've now, of course, over a period of time, brought in elements of behavior psychology, gamification, understood what works, what doesn't work, lots of feedback loops. We do a lot of customer feedback mapping. In fact, if you ever want to, you should go and read our Google reviews. We don't manipulate them at all. That's all first party, coming directly from the customer, talking about their journeys on our program. So yeah, it's a little bit of a combination of understanding your customer, building that right credibility, and then being there for them and helping them also understand that, look, our human body is a very complex but special machine, and there's never a binary output, right? There are always different ways to reach the same goal, and we'll help you find the way that works for you. So that's what's helped us over a period of time.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to look at, and actually, just to create context, talk a little bit about your growth this year, where you are right now in revenue, percentage growth as you've built it up, what you're looking to do next year, just so we can, again, put another baseline here so people can see just how well you're doing.
Sure. So we launched this in January 23. So it's been about now 20 months, and we've gone from $0 to $1 million in this period. So last 18 to 20 months that's been the journey. I think if I go more specifically, last 12 months, it's been close to 8 to 10x on our revenue number.
Yeah, baby.
For us,
go on, you can smile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're very proud of the growth that we've been able to achieve.
No, because it's been hard. Like, look, the reason why I love this, to me, is so special. And I think some of the companies like yourself that we invest in that are so special, it's very easy to get $1 million in revenue if you raise $10 million, right? When it's like incredibly hard is when you're testing and you're coming out with science-based outcomes on a shoestring as you're building this thing through. And so you're going on like incredible trajectory based on consumers loving what you're doing, but you being incredibly not just aggressive on outreach, but also highly skill-based on making sure that you're actually reaching out to the right people. And when it's not working, you change it and you adapt it. And it's a continually changing wheel. This is what I want to get across to folks, is like, there is a formula there. There is a perfect recipe for the most incredible meal that you've ever tasted, but you have to work for it. It doesn't come easy. And you've done exactly that.
Thanks, Brian. No, I think we've been fortunate, but we've also hung in there. I've raised money through this entire process. It's not like I raised money and then started building out. We've actually raised while we were building, and we continued to raise small check till we got, built more conviction. Then we got slightly larger checks, and we finally, closed that seed round earlier this year. So it's been that kind of a market. It's been that kind of an environment, and I guess we had to adapt to it. Of course, I would have been very happy if we had all this money on day zero, but that's not always how it works. So yeah, that's been our journey. I think for the next
year.
Yeah, so for the next phase, we're looking at going from $1 million, where we've already crossed that milestone now, to ending the year at a little higher than 1.5 million. And then by the end of the next year, we should be closer to the 4 or 5 million mark.
And that's the way everyone has to think. This is a venture scalable company with a growth loop in place, with a vision of what they're looking to build, with messaging that speaks directly to the consumer. And now moving into Horizon 2, building out the systems that takes it from that million, 1.5 in revenue in the year, all the way through to $4 to $5 million in the year, so that now it becomes a highly repeatable system that actually goes out to the world. So, and for investors who are listening to this, this is what they want. They're like, okay, cool. So he's going to hit a Series A next year. That's great. He's probably going to do a Series A at a reasonable valuation. Fantastic. Your valuation right now is what?
So the last round that we closed at 4.5. It's been a few months now. So yeah, that's where we stand right now.
So probably the next round is going to be somewhere like 7 to 10. And so think about it like this. I mean, small round before you get to your A, if you do a small bridge, right? But then the A, if it's at like $4 to $5 million in revenue, that A is going to be somewhere between 35 and 50. And so put yourself in put yourself in the minds of an investor. The only thing an investor cares about is what is the increase in valuation from today to your Series A? Really, after Series A, it works itself out. You either make it or you don't, but you're in a place of safety. If it falls down, it's because like we didn't do something to make sure that we continued with it. But it is a place of safety because you have enough money to be able to make it through. So what's the valuation today? What's the valuation then? Let's say the valuation today is 8. Let's say the valuation then is 40. That's a 5-bagger, okay? Now it's going to happen within a year because by the end of next year, he's going to get there. So I, as an investor, can get a 4x on top of my 1 that I have already within 1 year. I'll take it. What are the chances of this not happening? Pretty slim, actually, because based on the trajectory of the growth right now, I can see the growth loop is in place. I can see the systems are in place. I can see the market size is in place. So where else can I get a 400% increase on my money within such a short period of time where I have a relatively high degree of certainty that the company is going to make it? Ladies and gentlemen outside, that is your bar. Like that is what you have to produce to investors in any market, not just in this market, to be able to show what you're actually building. That's what paints a great picture. Okay, I want to finish with a couple of things. Good. I'm glad that that you're getting some good information from that, which is useful. Actually, I want to throw in one little thing, and then I want to talk about, after you just answer this back, because I just want to make sure that there's so many people who wanted to know information about what you're doing. It's crazy. But then after this, I want to look at the relationship. We've looked at the relationship between the channels, the ideal customer, the product itself, and the messaging, the consumer behavioral psychology. But then after this, I want to look at the relationship between B2B and direct to consumer and content marketing that fits right in the middle. Okay, and how you use that to grow to the next level and build systems around it. But how are you going to sort out TB in India in the meantime?
Not my space. I wish I had a easy one to this, but no, this is not something that we're working on yet.
You know, look, he's not been sainted yet, okay? Look, he's only going to save a couple of tens of millions of lives. Can you give him another few years before he moves on to the rest of the population, for God's sake? Man, people want everything right now. I love it. Okay, bring me back to as you develop this out. Let me create a little bit of context around this. I had a call one of our companies today that have built out this very innovative solution to wills, a little bit like what was done years ago, but on a much higher level, that brings in like, what are the pins for your relatives for their credit cards? And like, how do you incorporate crypto and bring it in there? And how do you manage like whole families? And the thing about like writing to people as a company that are not known yet, they had the most amazingly sophisticated growth loop, which was built around email sequences, landing pages. They actually reminded me of you. I actually mentioned you to them when we were on the call, but they're not working yet. And they're not working because there's not enough trust in the product yet. And something like your will has got a very high trust bar, because you just have to trust it. You're putting so much confidential information in there. And so we got into this conversation, not just about the freemium versus paid versus everything, but we got into the conversation of how do you use partners to be able to build trust so that you can then be in a position whereby the direct to consumer actually becomes a price which is affordable by them to actually acquire consumers. So partners, B2B, content marketing, direct to consumer. Take us home on that area, and then I want to finish just with your contact details so everybody knows how to connect with you.
Super. So I can tell you, like I've sort of taken this example a few times today. We're in a sunrise industry in terms of microbiome testing, and even gut health overall is just sort of picking up globally. India is maybe even a couple of years behind. So for us, it was very obvious that we can't go ahead and do everything. So from the beginning, from the outset, we've worked with credible partners across the ecosystem. It does two things. One, it makes us more credible, and second, it reduces the number of things that I need to solve myself. So in our case, for example, our sequencing is outsourced, right? It's outsourced to a credible lab. They do the sequencing, they do the raw data processing, they send it back to us. We do all of the interpretations. So where we keep our IP is that we have the closed loop of information around the customer, which means where do they start? What is their problem? What did their test results say? Which products or services did they consume, and did they get better or not? This is something only we know, but the sequencing part is all outsourced. All of our logistics, shipment, warehousing, everything is outsourced, and we're being able to work with the partners. And this I'm talking about my supply side. Now, what's happened is that now that we've built a foundation, we're starting to work with partners on the front end as well, which means I am now starting to partner with hospitals, with wellness clinics and centers, with standalone nutritionists and healthcare professionals, functional medicine specialists. And this is helping us spread the word. These people, and this is where the symbiotic sort of partnership came around, as that these were already healthcare professionals, which in some way or form were already working with consumers in their own businesses. So a functional medicine practitioner, for example, is already consulting multiple clients. They, however, do not have the infrastructure capability or access to be able to put together the microbiome tests, the interpretation of the results, the expertise in being able to understand what a particular genetic sequencing analysis throws out in terms of data, or how to connect that forward to actionable solutions in terms of probiotics. So now we go to them with this stack and we say, hey, you know what? Please maintain your relationship with your clients because you're the face for them, you're the expert for them, but we will empower you from the back end. So we'll give you this stack of product, we'll give you the test, we'll help you understand how to read the report, and you can share it forward with your clients. So without us having to spend, marketing dollars trying to reach each one of those consumers, now we have these little remarketing centers in a way, which are helping us get better access. And of course, for this, we have to empower them with the right kind of collateral. So content marketing becomes a part of that story. We're also figuring out constantly how to reach more such people so that we don't have to do this one at a time, and we can do a one-to-many kind of model with them as well. But yeah, work in progress for us. We're still D2C focused, very consumer focused, but we try and do a little bit more outreach on the B2B side now as well.
Wonderful. And contact details for Lena and anybody else who wants to connect with you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Tanveer Singh. You'll find me with Tanveer Singh Sova. My email address is Tanveer, that's TANVEER @sova.health. And if you want to reach me on WhatsApp, then I'm on an India number that's +91 9815 74691.
Beautiful. And we will finish where we started. I love that. Sova, a feeling of happiness. And it's a feeling of happiness for consumers because they get to be the best that they can be. It's a feeling of happiness for the company because they get to live their purpose. And it's a feeling of happiness for investors because we get a great return from having invested in this great man here. Thank you, Tanveer. Awesome information. Really good. I think everybody gets it. You're killing it. Next year is going to be an awesome year for you, as was this year. We're going to continue to break through and support you any way that we possibly can. But otherwise, just keep being the beast that you are and change the world a little bit better every day. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for all the kind words.